folks, welcome to this quick severe weather update. I'm Joshua Wisel here in the Weather 225 Storm Studios. Storms are now transitioning into more of a complex in portions of North Texas with an immediate tornado threat immediately over Melissa, North McKinney. No warning issued there, but there is a broad area of spin that is occurring right near the community of Melissa. So that's an area that you need to be watching closely, still showing some potential velocity signature showing up there. Stinger hook forming up there near Melissa. That may pose a tornado risk there. Also, a hook that is continuing to keep its shape and structure is just to the west of Sanger. We've got all this to cover and more in this live video update. So we're keeping a very close eye on the severe weather here in North Texas. Dangerous severe storms are now approaching the metro with 70-mile-an-hour winds possible near Denton. So we're watching these storms, and the other thing to watch is these are moving south-southeast with their motion. So notice how these are dipping more to the south rather than to the south, rather than to just the southeast. These are moving south-southeast, which will put it more closer to the community of Denton, Aubrey, Prosper, Salina. So we're watching that. And just real quick, the other thing that we're going to talk about with this one here in Collin County, there might be an additional warning. So what we're watching here is that storm has a tornado warning in effect, and that is, I believe, until 10:15, which is, we got another couple minutes with that one. But this one has been so erratic with its activity that at times there has been up to almost 5 areas of spin, and that doesn't mean that there's 5, large tornadoes or anything like that. That's not That's not something we're talking about, because that would be unheard of. What we're talking about is there's been 5 distinct areas of rotation with quick potential spin ups that we've been watching, and its motion's been deviant with the rotation areas, but the storm itself is moving to the south-southeast. So if you're in Blue Ridge, Melissa, Anna, make sure that you're in shelter, because it would not surprise me if we have some spin-up tornadoes with this. Now, the other thing we have to talk about is there were 12-inch tree branches that were ripped off of the trees from almost 80-mile-an-hour winds in Sherman from this same complex. In fact, there's even emergency managers are reporting tree fell through the roof of an RV at an RV park. From a large area of damaging winds there earlier. Gainesville reported 76-mile-per-hour wind gust. So there's been a long and broad area of significant to potentially even catastrophic winds over a large portion of our northern coverage area. And I am worried as these approach the north side of the metro here, especially if these continue to dip further and further south into the metroplex. You need to be looking out for this if you're in northern Dallas County, if you're in northern, potentially, Rockwall County. These areas, if this continues its south-southeasterly movement, this will easily be in portions of the metroplex over the next couple of hours. This isn't to scare you, but we need to be vigilant for a very real risk for potentially very strong damaging winds, and even maybe an isolated tornado or two across portions of the area. In fact, if you're in Hunt County, you are going to have potentially a very real tornado threat here in the next couple minutes once that warning is set to expire. Also watching some very strong winds, maybe an isolated tornado threat near Pilot Point. There's an area of rotation embedded within that portion of the storm. Still keeping an eye on some rotation to the west of Sanger. The only tornado warning that we have right now is this one near Blue Ridge, Melissa, and Anna. I also want to highlight there is now an additional storm that has fired up behind this activity. It is a lone supercell capable of large hail near quarter size, maybe 60-mile-per-hour winds. So Gainesville has had 2 rounds of storms tonight. 2 tornadic warned storms moved through with wind, hail, maybe even isolated tornadoes, because there was some damage from this. And now Gainesville, get ready. There's an additional storm moving through that will pose a large hail risk and maybe even some gusty winds. Radar is estimating about quarter size. That's the report that we have. Additionally, after that, we're not done yet, because there's a complex of storms moving through Oklahoma City that expands all the way down to the Red River those are eventually going to dip into some of our northern counties there as well. So don't think that you're completely out of the woods if you're in our northern counties. In fact, you might just be getting through the lead act before we get an ending act with these storms as they move through. And there's already been quite a bit of damage up in our northern counties, unfortunately, as these storms moved through. And I'm saying this, we're getting a new... Okay, so severe thunderstorm warning continues for Collin and Denton counties, and this is up to 70-mile-per-hour winds and now ping-pong ball-sized hail. Ping-pong ball-sized hail and 70-mile-per-hour winds might be occurring in Denton County, and this is a very, very dangerous storm. This warning extends all the way up into Cook and Grayson counties, by the way, so this is not just for these areas here. This is a big, big storm up in these areas. And we'll look at our estimated hail sizes there. I think the worst of the hail core is probably located over Sanger at this point. So ping pong ball size hails for that warning. Let's look at our velocity product. And I tell you, there's still a little area spin near pilot point there too. And if that's not necessarily rotation, that's indicating 70-mile-per-hour winds, and the radar might be misinterpreting that as some stronger rotation. Okay, and just as I say that, ping pong ball size hail was just reported in Sanger by a trained weather spotter. So that's what we've got going on there. Let's go look at this tornado warning again. Like we said, this one's been a real pain tonight, and the reason I say it's been a real pain is this one has had numerous areas of rotation. And it has not been too kind to cover, because typically, and I'm sure many of you know this who have lived here, typically you get these storms, they will have one storm motion, you'll get one area of rotation to watch. This has been anything but that. This one has had up to 5 areas of rotation at one point in time. Weak rotation, mind you, but this one has had just a multitude of issues, and it's going to continue to be a problem. And now it's producing up to 70-mile-per-hour wind gusts, golf ball size hail. New warning just came out for that storm. So if you are on the eastern sides of the metro, Rockwall, Heath, eastern Collin County, portions of Hunt County, portions of Fannin County, this is still going to be a tremendous problem, as this is producing up to 70-mile-per-hour winds. I will say, as opposed to earlier when we had numerous rotation areas, there's still a couple of rotation pockets south of Whitewright, to the west of Trenton. There's one area of rotation there. There's an area of rotation to the west of Anna, and maybe even a weaker one to the west of Melissa. But if this starts to transition over to more of a damaging straight line wind risk here, as you can start to see that bowing with the green on radar, that might start to eliminate some of these deviant rotation centers that we're watching there as well. Let's go look at velocity to this one to the north, and that one near Munster is starting to develop a little notch to it that we'll need to watch. Not for an immediate tornado risk, not saying there's going to be a tornado with this one, but this is... I hate to say it, this one might be increasing its hail core. So if you are just now watching, if you're just now tuning in, there might be some, let's say, radar's estimating. Let's see, radar might be estimating about half dollar size. That would not surprise me. We've already had reports of quarter-sized hail, but it would absolutely not surprise me if this starts doing a little bit more than that. Okay, so that's what we've got going on there. Maybe some half dollar size hail to the north. This one near Anna is concerning me now too, because the radar is now estimating almost 2-inch hail. This one might be a very, very dangerous storm if this starts to produce 2-inch hail and 70-mile-per-hour winds. Now think of a large chunk of ice getting thrown at 70 miles an hour. That could be a very, very dangerous situation here. Of course, the radar might be over-exaggerating at this time, but right now, at least the radar's estimating almost 2-inch hail, and we've had reports of up to almost 2-inch hail earlier with this storm when it was over Van Alstyne. So we need to be watching that. very carefully. So if you're watching with us and you live in Anna, Melissa, Blue Ridge, in addition to those significant winds, you could be seeing some golf ball sized hail, maybe even hen egg sized hail with 60-mile-per-hour winds. Let's go back to Denton. Golf ball sized hail was reported, or ping pong ball, excuse me, was reported in Sanger. Still seeing that potential spin up area kind of to the east of Pilot Point. And then new flash flood warning was just issued for Montague and Cook counties. Weather Service is saying that doesn't actually say how much rain has fallen. Just radar indicated. So that's a look at that. I also actually want to take a look with our other radar here and see if that's an outflow boundary starting to develop. Excuse me. If we start to see an outflow boundary fire up ahead of this, that could potentially help weaken this activity. So that would be a good thing. Okay, so looking over some surface analysis here, that is an outflow boundary occurring. So what we're watching here is that outflow could eventually help decrease the strength of these storms. But I am going to mention, if you are in Denton all the way down, because this is going to fire out ahead of the storm, Ponder, Justin, Roanoke, Louisville, Hebron, Carrollton, Grapevine, Capel, Keller, North Irving, Las Colinas. Eventually, if this outflow boundary moves through, those could easily be 60-mile-per-hour winds with that outflow boundary. So I'm going to just put out there that severe non-thunderstorm winds will probably be associated with this outflow boundary. Brian's asking, is this storm over Wise County? Right now, no storms in Wise County, but if you're on eastern Wise County, the outflow boundary may skirt some areas near Rome, Newark, Boyd, and maybe even at eastern Decatur if it's able to branch out enough. But Wise County, there's no storm activity. Eventually, we would have to watch for maybe some back building up to the north, but really, Wise County is perfectly fine right now in the all clear, not dealing with any of these problems. So that's some good news for Wise County. Definitely doing better than what's happening here in Denton and Collin counties, where we see the biggest problems right now, especially with these winds. And I tell you what, if you're in Salina, you need to be ready for easily 70, maybe 75-mile-per-hour winds. Pilot Point, Salina, Weston. Notice this area right here, those bright blues. And this is almost a Boeing effect with those winds. This may easily be very strong to significant winds near Aubrey, Pilot Point, and Salina. The radar's estimating about 70. It would not surprise me if this is easily 70 to 75. You need to be inside and away from windows. If you are in Salina, Gunter, Pilot Point, even Prosper. And the reason we're saying this is those winds can easily cause damage to homes, trees, you name it. And I tell you, another thing, if you are in a mobile home in Salina, Weston, Gunter, all the way down to Prosper, I would seek shelter elsewhere. We know that many of you who live in mobile homes or portable homes or RVs probably know this by now, because we mention this every single broadcast. When there's a tornado, that you should seek shelter elsewhere. What people don't consider is once we start getting that threshold above 60, 65, 70, mobile homes are equally as dangerous to be inside of. So if you're in a mobile home, portable home, or an RV, make sure that you abandon that and seek shelter as if it was a tornado, just because a mobile home at 70 to 75 mile per hour winds do not mix. But if you're in Gunter, Salina, Prosper, Weston, Van Alstyne, get ready. These are easily 70 to 75 mile per hour winds. And we're starting to see this Boeing segment with these higher velocity signatures. And typically when we see these pockets of higher velocity, that could be a pocket of significant winds up to maybe 75 miles an hour. So we're starting to see that coming together there. So if, again, we'll go back to the velocity. If you're just now tuning in with us, all the way from Gunter to just about New Hope, Prosper, Salina, Weston, be prepared for the potential for up to 70, maybe 75 mile per hour winds. We are getting quite concerned for what we're seeing visually with the radar. And getting just another report, there's been a couple of reports of trees that have fallen on RVs and even mobile homes in some of our northern counties. And this is why we're saying, even if the mobile home or the RV were not to be toppled by these catastrophic winds, you also have the risk of trees being blown down on top of it. Now you would have that risk with your home too, but it's more of a danger if you were in a mobile home or an RV when you have a giant tree fall on that. And we have reports of trees that have fallen on some RVs up to the north. So like I said, shelter as if it was a tornado, especially if you are in a mobile home, if you're from Gunter, Salina, all the way down to Prosper. This is some very concerning winds that we're noticing here with this velocity uptick, and this needs to be taken seriously in portions of Collin County, all the way up into Cook County. That is where some potentially very strong winds would be located. I also want to mention this outflow boundary moving into portions of the metro here shortly. It's moving through Denton now. That might be producing up to 60 mile per hour winds. I will mention though, notice how big this storm was just a short time ago, and then as this outflow boundary kicked out ahead of it, we're starting to see that storm decrease in size. In fact, if we look at our hail core tracker too, it might be decreasing the strength of the storm as well. We'll look at our storm health here, and there was a slight uptick with it. It's been struggling with the hail core, but not in the wind department. But the winds look to have shifted more to the north and east. There's still some strong winds near Denton, of course, from the outflow boundary. But I tell you, Salina, the radar is easily picking up to 65, 70 plus at this time. I'm going to go look at another radar source. This is the terminal Doppler for the DFW airport here. And I'm going to look and see what those winds look like. And this radar is showing tremendous winds. In fact, this one's actually showing 80 mile per hour winds. That does not surprise me whatsoever. This radar is actually much closer to this. We're going to go to this, and we're not trying to over dramatize this. We're not trying to create unnecessary fear. But if you are in Salina between Prosper and Gunter, there's a pocket of winds. The radar that is closest to this is showing 80 mile per hour winds, and it would not surprise me if 80 mile per hour winds are occurring with this. To put into perspective, 80 mile per hour winds are equal to a weaker and EF1 tornado. And keep in mind, tornadoes are typically more isolated. But once you start getting into those 70 to 80 mile per hour wind pockets, you start to get more widespread damage than it would a tornado when you get these giant pockets of wind, as opposed to just a micro area of wind within a county area with an isolated tornado. Weather Service is saying tennis ball sized hail now possible within this warning, all the way up into Cook and Grayson County. This one's going to be a very, very dangerous storm. We've been harping on this for a while now. And I have to look and see what the Weather Service just said on the other alert that they just put out there. But this one, if we have 80 mile per hour winds, so if we have tennis ball size hail, and we're looking at some reports here, the warning is up to tennis ball size hail, and there is reports in Sanger now from a trained weather spotter. Tennis ball sized hail was reported in Sanger. That was that core that we were highlighting there earlier. let's go back to this. And if you were watching with us earlier, we highlighted that core we thought would be golf ball plus. Unfortunately, it looks like it's much larger than that. Tennis balls falling in Sanger. This is a dangerous situation, folks, because if we still have this hail occurring, and let's go to this hail core tracker, this is aligned up with where those winds are in Salina. So if radar's estimating up to almost 80 mile per hour winds with the terminal Doppler sight, we're getting easily 70 plus with this radar. That's very dangerous. Stay away from the western portions of your home and or business or building or wherever it is that you're in. Don't be in a mobile home. If you're in the western sides of your house, stay away from the windows. Stay away from the western sides of your house. Tennis ball size hail and 70 mile per hour winds. Think of a projectile. Think of if you were. Think of if a baseball was going as fast as your car on 75 when there's no traffic. Emphasize that because obviously 75 is usually a nightmare during rush hour. Think if you were to be driving alongside a baseball at the speed that you go on 75. That's what we have going up here. It's not necessarily baseball, but right now we have numerous reports in Sanger of hen egg to tennis ball size hail, and that hail core right now is aligned with this area of significant winds moving into the Salina area. So if you're in Salina, you need to be away from the western sides of your house. Stay away from the western windows. Stay away from the western sides of your house. Very dangerous storm. We're also watching a storm that's on the Oklahoma side of the Red River. That would be posing another risk to our northern counties here in just a little bit. And I tell you what, let's do a quick overview real quick because there's a bunch of viewers who are just now tuning in. And there's a lot going on. I'm going to take off all these additional pieces to the radar here. What we have going on is several significant storms are moving through portions of the area, anywhere from 70 mile per hour winds to tennis ball size hail to even a tornado risk is occurring. The National Weather Service is now issuing a new tornado warning for Fannin, Collin, and Grayson, and that is for half-dollar size hail, radar indicated tornado. And this is for that pesky storm. It's been a pain all evening. It's been deviant with rotation areas. Sometimes it's had up to 4 or 5 small rotations within it that we've had to watch. But right now we have this going on, and also to the north along the Red River, this would also be potentially our next tornadic risk in our far northern counties. And we don't say that to scare you, but there's some curvature to this storm that's rather impressive and looks capable that it could produce maybe some rotation and a tornado threat. So we're watching that one. And yeah, that tornado would be located just between Desert and Trenton. That is just along 121 to the east of 160. If you're in this area, seek shelter now. Like I said, lowest floor, sturdy building, interior closet, or bathroom. Cover yourself with pillows and blankets. If you're on the top level of an apartment building, get to the lowest floor of the apartment, ask your neighbor, knock on their door and go, hey, can I just shelter with you for a minute? They will, I'm sure, more than likely let you in just to let you ride up the storm. If you're in a mobile home, make sure that you abandon your mobile home, seek shelter in a sturdy building elsewhere. I know a bunch of parks in the area may have designated shelters. I've been told that by individuals before. I'm not quite sure, but there might be designated shelters with some of these parks. So just seek shelter there. Also noticing within this warning there too, radar's estimating up to potentially 2-inch hail near Blue Ridge, and that would not completely surprise me the least. All right, so a lot going on. Checking our Twitter feed here. If you have any sort of reports, please tag us here. You can tag us on Facebook. You can tag us on Instagram too, at Weather225DFW. Spotter reporting now hail up to 3 inches in Sanger, baseball sized. It's not plotting there. I'm waiting to see. We've had a couple of weird reports so far today from others. So that's an unconfirmed report of baseball. But that would not totally surprise me if we already saw tennis balls earlier. All right, let's go back to the west, to the Salina storm still. Fairly significant winds are moving into the Salina area there. Maybe an area of rotation that is developed just to the south of Salina. There's a little inflow notch there. We'll have to watch that very carefully. Storm to the north is now moving just out of Gainesville, maybe producing 1-inch hail, maybe up to half-dollar sized hail. Further up to the north, this storm is about to cross into the Red River counties up to the north, and that'll be something to watch very carefully as that's moving into the North Texas area. Some of our eastern counties may have a watch here issued soon. It would not surprise me. We're seeing a new update from the Storm Prediction Center, especially for areas near Canton, Emory, and that's just about where we cover is just those 2 counties. Those might be included just because these storms are obviously moving in that direction. Non-thunderstorm winds going to be moving into southern Tarrant County here shortly with that outflow boundary. That is easily 50 to 60 mile an hour. So for the metro, get ready for non-thunderstorm winds of up to 60 miles an hour. So if you have outdoor furniture, loose outdoor furniture from Roanoke, Haslett, Keller, Grapevine, Capel, Carrollton, Hebron, the Colony, Louisville, any of those areas I called out, 50 to 60 mile per hour outflow winds are possible with this outflow boundary moving through this area now. Let's go up to the north. That rotation with this storm over Hunt, Fannin, and Collin and Grayson counties. If you're in Trenton, seek shelter. If you're in Leonard, Desert, Celeste, make sure that you're in shelter there as well. Even Blue Ridge, Merritt, and maybe even Wolf City if it holds together. That rotation right now is, I believe, over 121, and it is approaching Highway 78. Strong pocket of winds out ahead of it too. Also keeping an eye on this. I want to actually see if that's. Actually realistic, or if that is a radar issue. I'm gonna actually look at the. I'm gonna look at the other radar source here for just a second. We'll go back to this here in just a minute. But let's look at the TDFW. And I tell you what, there is a little area of rotation over Prosper. Definitely seeing a pocket of very significant winds going through Salina right now. The radar from this angle, keep in mind this is looking much closer at this. Radar showing 80 mile an hour winds still. So that would not surprise me if this is still producing 80 mile per hour winds, or 70 to 80 mile per hour winds in this area. And we're also noticing that little pocket of rotation near Prosper that we're going to have to be watching there too. The radar showing just a little area spin with that, but that's something to keep in mind there over the next little bit, because that is a noticeable mesocyclone that is fairly impressive right there. All right, so just to go back to this, we're looking at some reports here off to the side, seeing if anything new is coming in. Nothing since that last update with that potential watch to be issued for our last 2 counties in our eastern portion of the county coverage area. let's go back to that tornado warning storm here, and I want to show you just the radar cycle of this. We'll go to velocities here, and we'll put this into motion over the last couple minutes. You can see there's a good amount of inflow kind of wrapping around into Trenton. There may have even been a brief tornado, and the reason we're saying that is there's a lot of rain with this, and it's going to be obscured because this would probably have been a short-lived tornado. But notice it spiked up very quickly near Trenton. At one point in time, our rotation detection picked it up really quickly, and then over the next couple of scans, it was still rotating, but it was not as impressive. There's still a tornado threat between Trenton and Desert at this point in time, but there may have easily have been a spin-up tornado with that storm. That would not have surprised me if there was a spin-up tornado with that. All right, let's go back, and this area of winds is still very alarming near Salina from both radars that we were looking at. And you can actually see in the corner on the bottom right, we have both radars lined up. The one in the bottom right box, that is the TDFW, and the main radar you see here is from the Fort Worth site. And now this is indicating easily up to 60, 65, maybe even 70 mile per hour winds. Very strong pocket of wind. Heads up to North McKinney and Melissa. This may cause extensive wind damage, and we don't say that lightly, but when we start getting these signatures with these higher value velocity readings, that is indicative to us that this could easily be some fairly significant winds. In fact, the other radar source is showing almost 90 mile per hour winds. That might be a slight exaggeration, but this looks like a fairly catastrophic area of winds coming together with that. In fact, if we go to this radar here, we'll show you some very strong winds based off of the TDFW. Let's get a look from TDAL. That's the neighboring small radar site, and even this one is showing up to 85 mile per hour winds. We'll have to wait and see what the Weather Service says, but this looks like the most concerning pocket for significant winds. Let's see. And let's see. Wolf City is sounding their sirens. That is a new report. Sirens are sounding there. Okay, new severe thunderstorm warning includes Dallas County. And I'm pretty sure that this extends all the way into Dallas, maybe for a bit of that outflow. Okay, so Dallas County, Rockwall County, all the way into Hunt County, 70 mile per hour winds and 2-inch hail is moving into the area. 70 mile per hour winds and 2-inch hail is starting to move into that area. You need to be away from windows as this starts to moving into Dallas County. I do want to warn viewers who are watching right now. This storm is coming directly towards my location, so if we see any type of power surge, that would interrupt this for sure. That would interrupt the broadcast for sure. So that's just a quick heads up that if we do see this move into the area, that could potentially cause maybe a power issue with those 70 mile per hour winds. So hopefully that doesn't happen for us though. Yeah, and we'll have to be watching that western side of that storm, just because this one has had a history of producing up to baseball-sized hail. I tell you what, in Grandview or Valley View, excuse me, Gainesville to Valley View, that might be producing ping pong ball sized hail just from what the radar is indicating. In fact, if I look at Echo Tops, not quite in the red yet, so maybe $half plus. Not much bigger than $half, not much bigger than ping pong ball, but that is going to be a next hail producer. I also want to point out here along the Red River, new tornado warning on the Oklahoma side. That's something we have to be watching because that'll be another tornado warned risk as this gets closer. If you're watching in Irving, Las Colinas, Capel, Keller, Boyd, Azle, North Richland Hills, Louisville, Roanoke, Grapevine, Southlake, and Keller, there is a strong outflow boundary moving towards the area, and this may easily be producing up to 60-mile-per-hour non-thunderstorm winds. So if you're in this area and you have outdoor lawn furniture and you can quickly bring it in, I would do that. On the Dallas County side, there is a severe thunderstorm warning for 70-mile-per-hour winds from this storm moving to the south-southeast, 70-mile-per-hour winds and up to 2-inch hail. Now the good news is this outflow may help to weaken this as it's moving closer. So we'll have to watch that. So we have this. If you're just now tuning in with us, new severe thunderstorm warning issued for Dallas County, Denton County, Collin County, and it's for this storm here. And we're also looking at a new severe thunderstorm warning was just issued for portions of, I believe, Collin, Denton, Cook, and Grayson counties. That's that storm to the north. So now we have warnings within warnings. So it's a giant cluster on radar. But not without good reason. We're watching, of course, all these storms. Most significant one right now appears to be the ones that are moving through portions of Dallas, Denton, Collin, Rockwall, and Hunt counties here, where strong outflow is going to be moving through, producing potentially 50, 60 mile per hour non-thunderstorm winds. In addition to that, we have... In addition to that, we have 2-inch hail, which is in the warning there too. So I'm going to put something out just because it's starting to move through the DFW area. Send it out to our media. So that's what we've got here, posting that we're live. We're going to send that out just so we can get as many people tuned in here so everyone's aware. It's because it is a summer evening here in North Texas. There's people out and about. There's people camping. There's people out and about shopping, going to the movies. There's a myriad of things that happen here in North Texas. One of the busiest metros here, one of the busiest metros in the country. There's a lot of people who may not be tuned in for severe weather. We just want to make sure that they are tuned in and safe. So we have this going on. Someone just mentioned, Samantha mentioned Fannin County. We'll go up to the north. Fannin County is in a warning. There is a tornado warning that splits portions of it. This one has been going in and out. And typically we know, you'd cover just one storm if it was severe. We're noticing a handful of pockets of significant winds in rotation, and a lot of the rotation areas with these tornado warned storms, they'll quickly form, and just as quickly as they form, they kind of reorganize. So we're bouncing back and forth. But in Fannin County, there's a couple of warnings issued, and the most significant is for 70 mile per hour winds and golf ball size hail. Then there's this tornado potentially south of Leonard that has been spinning up. Someone asked for Roy City, Rockwall County. You are not in any activity now. You are in a severe thunderstorm warning for the potential for golf ball size hail and 70 mile per hour winds. Here shortly, though, that area of storms is moving in into Roy City over the next little bit. So if you're in Roy City, just stay away from western or north-facing windows as this storm is going to be moving through. 65, maybe 70-mile-per-hour winds and hail potentially up to golf ball size is possible. We'll check that hail core tracker for you just to see what's going on. Big hail core north of Lucas and located over McKinney. That is showing up to golf ball to ping pong ball sized hail mixed in with that hail core with that particular storm. For our friends here to the north near Valley View, potentially golf ball sized hail at radar estimated up to the north. And then finally, we're watching new development near Monte County. That will be monitored here shortly. And I am curious to see if this outflow sparks off additional activity. No guarantee that it does, but it's something else to watch here. And then finally, for our northern Red River counties, we need to be vigilant and not forgetting about this. Tornado warning on the Oklahoma side. That may move into North Texas here shortly too. We're also noticing this one near Valley View is starting to get a hook feature to it. Some broad rotation. We'll be watching that one. But right now we're bouncing back and forth. There's a million things going on here. And one of the things that we've been dealing with a lot of these rotating storms is sometimes these rotating storms won't have one distinct area of rotation for us to mention to the viewer. There will be several deviant rotation areas, and what I mean by that is some of these will develop and then it won't have a set path. And typically when you get these spin ups, the reason it'll be a deviant path is when tornadoes start to die, they move directly north. And we've seen that with a handful of these rotation areas that may have been brief spin ups over these last few counties in Collin, Grayson, Cook, and Denton counties. There may very well have been a few isolated spin-up tornadoes. Some areas are probably not going to see any sort of damage reports because they were mostly rural, but we could easily see some weaker tornado reports from some damage that we've seen across parts of these counties earlier today. But when you get these motions, sometimes you'll get a couple of these tornadoes and they'll be deviant in path because we already have a weird storm motion to the south-southeast with these storms. And then tornadoes, when they start to die, like I said, they love to turn to the north when the storm dies. And that's what we've got going on here. Fortunately, these tornadoes are still just radar indicated. Collin, Fannin, and Hunt County updated the warning, still tornado radar indicated. No confirmed tornado. Still treat it as if it was a tornado just to be completely safe. But right now, we don't have anything to confirm off of that, and they did trim off portions of Randolph, Trenton, Leonard, Blue Ridge. So let's go back to the reflectivity. Strong outflow now moving towards DFW Airport. It'll be in the Hebron, Carrollton, Farmers Branch, Capel, Grapevine, and Minster's Chapel area within, let's say, 5 to 10 minutes here. Looking to see if there's any more comments on either YouTube or Facebook. And thank you for tuning in to this broadcast. Be sure to share this with others just to make sure that everyone is weather alert if you know anyone in these areas. Like we said, it is a very active evening, especially because it's summer. There's a lot going on. We know it is. We know it's a weekday. It's Thursday, but you know people like to be out and about in town, especially because it's summer. There's people camping. There's people out and about. Just want to make sure that they're completely aware that these storms are moving into the area. So make sure to share this with them so they are weather alert. All right, moving up to the north near Valley View. And also feel free to leave comments or anything in the comment section. We are scanning both of those. We'd love to answer any questions. And we'll get to those in a timely manner. To the north, we're noticing this little hook feature starting to develop near Valley View. That doesn't mean that there's an immediate tornado threat with this one, but that's just something to watch here. Ingredients are still favorable within the this area for potential tornadic development, and it's just something to watch. But also when you get these rotation areas, in addition to the tornado risk like what we have today, that also means increasing hail potentially is occurring. And radar is now indicating potentially golf ball sized hail near Tioga. So if you're in this area, be sure to seek shelter away from windows for that potential large damaging hail. Lowry Crossing looks like maybe hen egg sized hail radar estimated over there as well. Let's look at the velocities there. Radar's indicating rotation. It doesn't really look like it though. We're also looking outside here. And the reason we're looking outside, sorry if I'm away, we're turning on just a lamp so we don't trip over our computer. We're looking outside because the outflow boundary is moving towards me, so I'm going to let you know what those winds look like from here in Irving, Texas. So if you're south of here, you know exactly what to expect. But sharp outflow boundary moving into the northern sides of Dallas and Tarrant County here shortly. Those could be 50 to 55 mile per hour winds. But all's calm here for now. National Weather Service updating severe thunderstorm warning. And that is for far northern Grayson County. So just quarter-sized hail up there. That's some good news for them. Any updates from anywhere? Anna, Collin County reports thunderstorm wind damage. Emergency management reports down tree and a structure fire. And pump station power lost in Anna, time estimated by radar. So there's damage in the community of Anna. Oh, that's concerning. Whitesboro and Grayson County reported a 30-inch diameter tree down in Whitesboro. More delayed reports coming in of baseball-sized hail in Sanger, and that does not surprise me at all. We started getting those tennis ball-sized hail reports in Sanger earlier. That was a very, very nasty storm, and that does not surprise me that we're continuing to get some of these reports, especially because that storm now has moved out of the Sanger area, so people are going out. They're getting pictures of these things. There's numerous reports on social media coming in of this large damaging hail in Sanger, and that does not surprise me at all. And personally, for me, I'm ready for this system to be over because we have been covering storms with non-stop massive hail over the past couple of days. And it's just frankly getting old. And I'm sure for some of these areas that have been hit multiple times by this large damaging hail, they're also sick of it. Fortunately, there is an end on the horizon. We have another day of severe weather coming up. We'll let you know when that is. We're just going to get through this day first. It's not going to be quite as concerning as the moderate risk that we've seen here, but the additional risk that we're talking about on the horizon to be watching, that would be roughly around Saturday. So that's the next day up, but right now we're just going to get through this. But after that, just real quick, forecast-wise, once we get through all the severe weather activity, then we're moving on to the extreme heat. So for North Texas, if it's not one thing, it is another. So we're going to go from the severe weather threat all the way into that extreme triple-digit heat on the horizon. So we're going to go from one nasty weather thing into the other. Good old North Texas weather here. We love covering it. That's why we've been doing it for 8 years here. And we thank everyone who is tuning into this broadcast right now. Thank you for your comments, sharing the broadcast, liking the broadcast. It helps support us. It also helps get the outreach so we can help as many people as possible during severe weather. Let's go to this storm, and it is not as impressive as it was earlier tornadic-wise. It looks like it's primarily taking over as a damaging wind threat. Let's also look. Princeton, some strong winds are moving through that area. Slight bit of rotation near Coopville. heads up to Coopville. Maybe some weak rotation coming together in that area. Let's take a look at the hail core tracker. That hail still... radar's estimating about ping pong ball to golf ball sized. Okay, so the radar just got an alert off to the side. So the cool thing about this radar is it tells us the max hail size within the radar range, or how far the radar's looking out. And we were just shown that tennis ball size is the largest hail recorded or picked up by radar. And it looks like it's this one near Valley View. That would not surprise me. This one is a rogue supercell. Now, it's over an environment that has had heavy rainfall, but it is still unstable enough that it's going to be supportive for that. And this one would not surprise me if they start to upgrade this one for up to tennis ball sized hail near Tioga, to be completely honest. Let's see. Noticing a southwest flight flying through this area where the outflow is kind of surprising. That must be a very rough landing. Also noticing quite a bit of lightning picking up here, looking off to the north at this. So two things. That one storm, the outflow may have helped develop additional storms up here. So the one thing that we're watching is there's additional development, and this is one of the things the models have been absolutely terrible with convection. And when I mean convection, what we mean by convection is that's the rain activity that you get. Think of the atmosphere as an oven. You turn convection on, you put, let's just say you put like a tiramisu in the oven, and the heat helps that to bake and rise. Or if you put bread in an oven, it's going to rise. If you have a convection oven, obviously the heat helping the bread or whatever you're cooking to rise in the oven. That's like the atmosphere. You put the ingredients together, you put it in a favorable environment, they will start to grow and explode. That's what you have with this atmosphere. So when you have these storms, like I said, in that favorable environment, they're going to start to rise. We have quite a bit of instability still, and we're going to be seeing potentially additional storms. That's what we mean by convection, is that atmosphere that leads to that rising and the development for storms. Unfortunately, all week long, the models have been absolutely terrible. They've either overplayed everything, and that one I don't fault them for, just because we have had a lot of issues with sinking air boundaries, these pesky little forecast issues that are hard to determine, and they don't really pop up until the last second. That can eliminate activity, but a lot of the time it underestimates a lot of the activity. And right now the models did an okay job picking up on this little complex that moved through first, but it did a terrible job picking up on this additional development that we see further to the west. And this will be something we need to watch very closely, because eventually the ones near Montague, if these stay strong over the next couple of hours, we've exceeded our tornado watch time. That tornado watch was supposed to end at 10. I have to see if they updated it. But if that ended at 10 and we're still seeing additional development, this stuff up here is strengthening very quickly. This, with a south-southeasterly movement, would come very close to the Metroplex. This is what we need to be watching carefully. And we don't say that to overhype these things. This is a very concerning deal when we have additional supercells still firing up here, and that outflow boundary might be assisting in that. That one in Montague, let's take a look at the radar with that one. Small area of rotation with that we'll need to watch too. In fact, it's got a hook feature to it. And then of course this one on the Oklahoma side, this one might be capable of quite large hail and also a tornado risk. This one has been tornado warned by Norman for quite some time now. And now we have your classic supercell with a screaming eagle look to it. occurring over here in portions of Grayson and Cook counties. This one has a fairly noticeable hook to it too. We're not done yet, folks. I hate to say it, but we've got possibly a couple more hours of this, unfortunately. And that first complex is moving out. That's primarily taking over as a damaging wind threat. But I am concerned that we have additional supercells even continuing to develop. Notice there's one near Bellevue that's starting to develop south of the one to the north. We have additional storms that are going to fire up, and that could be a real problem over the next couple of hours. Hopefully, these will start to weaken as they make their way closer, but these are just continuing to strengthen, especially in the hill department. As the one near Montague looks capable of up to $half size hail, maybe. And then the one in Tioga, that one looks capable of up to exceeding golf ball size easily. Starting to get a little wind here in Irving from that outflow boundary moving through. Just checking to see what it looked like outside. Yeah. We'll look at your comments here real quick as there's a little break. See if anything's talking. If anyone's talking on this. YouTube. If I can get it to open. Feel free to leave comments if you're on YouTube or Facebook. If you have any questions or anything like that. Kelly's asking, how is it looking in Capel? Right now in Capel, outflow winds are moving through. We will have to definitely watch these storms to the north if they continue to strengthen. Eventually those might make their way later. Not a guarantee that they do. It's just we're watching those very carefully with this additional development. But right now in Capel, nothing's going on. Also hope you and the family are doing well. Thank you for watching. Paris, Texas. So up there, if you're watching, our coverage area does not include Lamar County where Paris is. So that's why we haven't been talking about it. But I am happy to check that for you. Sorry, I was looking at some reports coming in. There's some more delayed reports of 3-inch hail from that storm in Denton County earlier. That was significant. In Paris, Texas, if you're watching still, 65-mile-per-hour winds, quarter-size hail is what it's warned for. Would not surprise me. Unfortunately, for those areas up to the north, that radar does not look real well at these storms. So just be prepared for 60, 65-mile-per-hour winds over the next little bit. It does look like the worst of it's to your south, though, but it would not surprise me if winds continue to make their way up there. Someone asked about Rockwall a second ago. Gavin is asking about Rockwall. Right now, the worst of it is immediately to the north of Rockwall, and we'll show you the time lapse with the radar moving through. Get ready. There is a pocket of winds. I'm not sure which side of Rockwall you're on, but there's a pocket of winds near Coopville that looks fairly concerning. Now, it does look like an area of rotation, but that to me is also indicative of maybe some 65-plus mile-per-hour winds mixed in with that. So just make sure that you're inside of a sturdy building, away from windows. I will watch that. I will have to watch that. Looks like some weak rotation with that, so that's something to watch. Not saying it's an immediate tornado warning, but it's better to be inside and away from windows and doors, just because regardless, 65, 70-mile-per-hour winds are sometimes equal to a small, weak tornado. So just wait inside. You'll be fine. In fact, this might move to the east of Rockwall. So let's look at that. Someone asked about Gunter. And Gunter's in the path of this rogue supercell moving to the east-southeast. It might come very close, but this one we're watching for that increased hail potential. And like we said, we're not trying to over-dramatize this, but easily hen egg-sized hail will be possible with this storm based off of what radar's indicating. We're also noticing that little hook feature It's not impressive rotation, but it's weak enough that there could be potentially a risk down the line. But that will definitely also um, that one will have to be watching, because sometimes rotation also means increasing hail potential, and I do think that this one has a fairly good hail core with it that we will have to be watching. Someone asked about this cell in particular. Where through Collin County would you see that cell tracking? Given its, I'll show you. This is moving. They labeled it as moving to the east at 50 miles an hour. I would say east southeast now. Gunter, Van Alstyne, Weston, maybe far North Salina, and eventually, if it keeps itself together on its current track and strength, Anna, Westminster, Desert, maybe Blue Ridge, maybe even Trenton, but that's way down the line. But basically, Gunter, North Salina, Weston, Van Alstyne, Anna, and Westminster. That would be my guess where this is going with its current track. In fact, we might even see a new warning issued for this one here by the Weather Service, since this is pretty much out of its warning box there. Someone asked about Princeton. We'll go back to Collin County. Princeton, the worst of this particular storm looks to be, and we'll put it into motion there. The worst of it looks to be almost out of the area. The worst part of the first portion of the storm has moved out, but there might be just a little bit more to get through for the next couple of minutes. Someone said, in Garland, the sirens sounded. So the reason the sirens sounded in Garland, and we tell this to viewers, is when a warning is triggered for an area that has winds that exceed 65-mile-an-hour winds, it's up to the emergency manager for that county whether or not to sound the sirens for anything. So typically people think they're just for tornadoes. When the sirens sound, it's usually up to the discretion of one emergency manager, and the threshold is usually winds of 70 miles an hour, hail larger than ping pong ball, and of course tornadoes. But the reason the most likely reason, and like you said, probably because of the winds, it was because that warning contained 70 mile per hour winds in the hazard, so they just wanted to alert people outside. And you're welcome for everyone who's saying thank you. More than glad to look at these storms for you to let you know what's happening here. Thank you for tuning in. Check the YouTube, see if there's anything there. Let's see. Did I miss anything? Let's see. Nope, don't want the audio to my own video. Don't want that re-loop. Doesn't look like I missed anything. Feel free to leave any sort of comments or questions if you want in the comment sections of either the YouTube or the Facebook. We will be checking those over the next little bit. One of the reasons I love these coverages we get to do here on Facebook and YouTube is the interactions where we get to help the viewers and let them know what's going on. It's a much different experience than if you were on, of course, a TV station, not able to interact with viewers. So yeah, that's one of the reasons we love doing these broadcasts, is we get to interact with people who might have questions during severe weather. All right, new scan, Caddo Mills, Royce City. Here's another concern for those areas. Checking to see new update from the Weather Service for Cook County. Okay, so that's the far northern storm. Blue Ridge just reported 2-inch hail. That was from an emergency manager. Does not surprise me. I will say, though, I'm grateful that we haven't seen the 5-inch hail that it could have been. Someone asked about Celeste. So that's a good thing that they're in the bathroom. That's the safest place to be. Lowest level bathroom, interior closet. Just huddled down in there. There is a warning in effect, but that rotation does not look with our rotation tracker. This to me looks like potentially the worst is almost over. So just remain in shelter until that warning's over. But it looks like the main rotation is probably going to be south of there. We'll show you that. We'll show you that loop. Rotation went through the Celeste area there earlier. No confirmation of a tornado. Haven't really seen any sort of damage reports or anything like that either, which we're thankful for. Hopefully there was no storm with damage, but to me, I would think that they might consider dropping this warning. The worst of it looks to be further to the south. New severe thunderstorm warning. This is for Collin County. Oh, there's a bunch of counties here. Ooh, that is a very long warning box here. New warning includes Rockwall, Hunt, Kaufman, Van Zant, Hopkins, Rains, Delta, Lamar, Collin, and Dallas counties until midnight. 2-inch hail and 70-mile-per-hour winds. I also want to quickly note Caddo Mills. There might be some rotation. That would be the next tornado threat. Right there near Caddo Mills that just popped up. Just got my attention there. Yeah, so if you're in Caddo Mills, there's no tornado warning, but I would go ahead, cache Caddo Mills, these areas here, just to be safe. Stay in the lowest floor, interior closet or bathroom for the next couple of minutes. And the reason we keep saying this with this is not the kind of setup where you're going to see these long track, violent tornadoes you get to track over several miles. You get to see it. It lasts forever. We're probably going to see a bunch of these little embedded spin-ups that produce quick tornadoes, and just as quickly as they form, they go away. So when you see these little areas that stick out like a sore thumb, we have to kind of look for a minute and go, that looks a little bit concerning. And when we align it with the hail core, that also could be indicative of a strong hail core there too. Let's look at our tornado detection tool. And this one hasn't really been working with this setup just because there's so much precipitation with it. But I'm telling you, Caddo Mills, that area looks like strong rotation. That might be the next area we have to be watching there. And we'll see how that evolves. Looking elsewhere to the north, we had some viewers that were talking about Van Alstyne earlier. That was their area. That storm still looks rather impressive, but it does not look as impressive on the hail side of things. Definitely some 60-mile-per-hour winds to 70-mile-per-hour winds are possible with this little cell. Up to the north, I tell you, Gainesville cannot get a break. There is a Gainesville and Marysville. That is a potential 2-inch hail producer over Marysville. That hail core is going to be moving into Gainesville here shortly too. That's something we need to watch. I want to quickly go back to this Caddo Mills storm. And Chase is mentioning CC not showing over Caddo Mills, but velocity looking intense. And one of the reasons velocity will probably not show up with this is, first, we're looking, it's about 5,000 feet. Once you start getting further and further from the radar, you typically would need a stronger tornado to loft the debris high enough for the radar to detect it. This may not be that far out, but typically when you get these little spin-up tornadoes too, they might be so fast that they don't loft the debris high enough to actually make it that far into the atmosphere. Typically you need a tornado. Think from a physics perspective. If you have a spinning force with something rotating around it, it will be pulled into the center of gravity that's rotating it. And when that center of gravity starts to weaken, it starts dispersing that gravity. But when you have that that core that's keeping it rotating around it, it will continue to levitate that higher into the atmosphere. The radar has something to scan. But a spin-up tornado, it will do that for a brief moment in time, but not long enough for the radar to detect it. So if there was a spin-up, we probably won't see that. But that could have been a brief tornado. And, okay, that's concerning. So for Caddo Mills, just be inside like it is a tornado. Weather Service just gave us a new update. 80 mile per hour destructive winds for Caddo Mills and Cache. So they're looking at what we were looking at too. Those winds were quite strong. To me, that looked more rotational than it did. But that might be transitioning over to a strong, intense wind field. Caddo Mills, this is a very dangerous situation. 80 mile per hour winds in addition to quarter-sized hail. National Weather Service saying, quote, "This is a destructive storm over Caddo Mills headed towards Cache." So if you're in Caddo Mills, 80 mile per hour destructive winds are possible within this small warning. You can notice it's just for this pocket of the storm. And also one thing to notice, a new thing this year with these warnings is notice how this one has a thicker shade of black across both portions of the box with the yellow in the middle. And then there's a difference for all these severe thunderstorm warnings. They started issuing different levels of damage tags with each level of storm. So now we get destructive, considerable, and all those sorts of tags with these storms. So they've made categories to the severe thunderstorm warnings. This one is the highest it gets with destructive. So this is crossing right now. Highway 66 approaching, I believe that's I-30. So if you're in Caddo Mills, definitely seek shelter as if it was a tornado. Think of it from this perspective. 80 mile per hour winds are equal to a weaker tornado. The only difference is a tornado is going to be more isolated. When you have a widespread area, that's more damage than a tornado. And yeah, a spin up cannot be ruled out with this, just because this looks more rotational than a straight line area of winds. And that, to me, when those reds and those greens are very tight with one another, for those who don't know, this is called gate to gate, when it's right up against each other. That may have been what happened here, because the winds do not look as intense as they did a second ago. Not to downplay this, but this is a very destructive storm wind-wise if we're going to continue to see 80 mile per hour winds. To the west, emergency manager reported in Levon almost an 80 mile per hour wind. See when that was reported. Okay, so that was when this other little pocket of rotation moved through. So I think it's safe to say when we start seeing these little pockets, just because this has been happening all night, you don't get one distinct area, or like what we saw a couple of weeks or a couple of days ago and then a couple of weeks ago. A couple of weeks ago in May, there was an area of strong winds in, I believe it was Hood County, where it was just a giant blob of wind, and we tracked it for a long period of time into Johnson County. And then in Navarro County, a couple of days ago, there were strong winds. You could see it, just a giant blob of wind that was there for a long period of time. When we start getting these little pockets here, it would not surprise me if it's a spin-up tornado going unwarned, or B, if they're quick little bursts of intense winds. Someone reporting Garland is sounding the sirens. We had reports from Garland, Saxe, and kind of the Wiley area there earlier that sirens were going off. I couldn't confirm Wiley, but we heard from some viewers that in that area they were hearing sirens going off. That is not necessarily for a tornado threat. That is because the Weather Service issued the severe thunderstorm warning for 70 mile per hour winds. And I mentioned earlier, typically when sirens go off, they're outdoor alerts for people outdoors from a weather risk. Emergency managers will choose to sound them typically if it's large hail, damaging winds, or tornadoes. Typically, if it's hail, it's usually exceeding ping pong ball size, and winds are exceeding 65 that they sound those. So they're sounding those just because there is this giant area of wind that we're watching. And right over there, I have two suspicious areas that we need to be watching very carefully. And this is the nightmare of these storms tonight. Is we see these pockets develop very quickly, and then they go away. And some of them get warned, and some of them don't. Some of them might be spin-ups, and some of them might be just quick bursts of intense wind. I think the one over by Fate might be... the one over in Fate might be non-uniform beam filling, and what that means is that is a problem with the radar. If I go up with height, I'm going back and forth. There's a couple of issues with radar sometimes that you need to interpret. Sometimes you'll get non-uniform beam filling. That's when the radar hits some type of it hits some type of ground clutter or tree or something weird like that, and the beam is completely off in one region. And then sometimes you'll get what we call side lobe contamination, where it looks like there's rotation occurring, and I'll show you. This might be side lobe contamination. We'll go into the 2 panel here, and we'll align where those intense winds are located. Notice those intense winds. This is in the same time that this was taken. This might be side lobe contamination, just because we see this contaminated area with no, it's not lining up here with where reflectivity is occurring. So that might be that. The other suspicious area, and this is why we have to look at so much with radar, is sometimes when you get a setup like this and there's so much going on, the radar sometimes can throw in a little bit of a curveball, and it's not what's actually happening. And that's why we have to look at these things just to make sure, is that actually rotation? Is it actually winds? We want to make sure that we can give the best information, so you know. Definitely noticing a little bright color there with the radar. But I'm curious if that's actually wind or if that's just a contaminated radar beam, just because it aligns with that other one. We'll see with the next scan, but that could either be a suspicious pocket that we have to continue to monitor, or that could be some contamination. In fact, I'm actually going to leave this in the double pane mode so we can actually show you what's happening with these storms as they're occurring. And I'm going to take the box out of the corner so we can kind of align this at the same time. This is one of the cool things with Weather 225 is you're going to see these radar tools that you typically wouldn't see anywhere else. And we have the latest technology to bring you this information so that you can stay informed. Now, this area does not look to be contaminated. Royce City, quick heads up. Let's see. If you're in Royce City, this is the next pocket of strong winds. This does not look like contamination like the last scan that we saw. It's lining up more with it. So Royce City, we've been seeing these storms all evening where they'll quickly pulse up. You get a strong pocket of wind or potentially a spin-up tornado with it. This is going to be the next area. In fact, this one is just south of where we had a report of almost 80-mile-per-hour winds earlier. So it wouldn't surprise me if this lasts another scan. They might pull a warning for that one. But both of these, still noticing some strong winds near Caddo Mills moving towards Cache. Not as strong as it was earlier, but it wouldn't surprise me if maybe these are 70. Someone's asking, should Royce City / Fate take shelter? Fate is probably fine from this. If you're in Royce City and it would make you feel better, you can go ahead and do that. Just stay in the lowest floor near the centermost room or in the centermost room that's a closet or bathroom. Regardless if this is a tornado or not, it's going to be strong winds, so you're going to want to be in the centermost part of your room to begin with, just because if this is 70 plus mile per hour winds, there could be some debris. You never know if something could hit a window. If it is strong winds, it's just better to be in the centermost room, put as many walls between you and the outside, stay away from windows and doors. So yeah, I would stay downstairs and away from windows at minimum, because this could be potentially some strong winds if it's not a spin up. So that's my take for what's happening in Royce City. It may not be a tornado, but it could easily also be 70, maybe 80 mile per hour winds, which there is a dramatic threshold once we get from the typical 60 mile per hour winds all the way up to 75 or 70, 75 to 80. There's a dramatic difference between it. So if there are strong winds, I would stay away from the northern and westerly windows of your home in the Royce City area. That area of wind right now, we'll watch to see if that new update comes in about 30 seconds. That would be located right along 66, and I believe that one is Highway 30. So we'll be watching that. Hopefully it is neither, and it's just a bad radar presentation. Like we said, we don't like seeing when storms damage areas, but I think there's just enough evidence to indicate that might be winds, because it's starting to weaken just a little bit. That may have been a pocket of brief 70 plus mile per hour winds. Ooh, let's go to the north. And I tell you what, I am very ready for all this severe weather to be over. Typically, a lot in the weather community love covering severe weather, but when you have 4, almost 5 straight days of intense wind and hail, it gets exhausting from covering. It gets exhausting from seeing people's lives get affected by the large hail and the winds. And I can't remember a period over the last 8 years here in North Texas covering DFW weather where we had 5 consistent days with reports of baseball-sized hail consistently. It's just been absolutely tremendous. And the reason we're in this, just a quick little update. We're not going to go on for too long, but one of the reasons for this is we are in an ENSO neutral, transitioning into, as many of you have heard, the super El Nino. And what that does is it's pulling jet stream energy further south than it would typically go in the summer. Typically in the summer, the jet stream goes to the northern U.S. and to Canada. They get their severe weather. Essentially, they get what we get in spring up in the summer, and we get the dome of high pressure, strong high pressure with the ridge of high temperatures, the heat dome, if you will. That's typically what we get in summer. The El Nino transitioning is pulling jet stream energy, so instead of it going north for the summer months, it is remaining over our area, and when that happens, we have a Gulf of Mexico, which is very warm, very humid. That is pulling in insane amounts of energy into the southern plains, into the southeastern U.S., the Gulf Coast. And when you have that jet stream energy, which is typically to the north with usually above the moisture that you typically see in the late winter, early to mid-spring months, you get this explosive severe weather activity. So it's that weird pattern between ENSO neutral and El Nino, which has pulled this jet stream. And typically this is a pattern you'd see in May. Think back in 2013, right around the week of May 20th. Many of us remember that for like what we saw with the El Reno and the Moore tornado up there. If you're just now tuning in, this is just a quick backstory to the pattern. Back in that year, there were several days of consistent storms in May. This is something similar. We're not getting obviously those violent tornadoes, but we're getting multiple days of severe weather because of a stalled boundary over North Texas. That's the culprit, is the pattern, and we're getting the stalled boundary. So that's just a quick little reason for why these storms are this way, just because we've had a lot of messages this week as to why we are having these storms. Canton, it wouldn't surprise me if that one went warned for quarter-sized hail. Let's see. Also, like we said, if you're just now tuning in, feel free to leave any comments or questions in the chat. We'll get to those in a timely manner, either for our Facebook or our YouTube live. Let's see. Northwest Tioga, $50 size hail. Caddo Mills. Okay, there we go. Caddo Mills, 80 mile per hour wind, confirmed wind by, I believe that's a weather station. 80 mile per hour winds, intense winds there. It would not surprise me if that little Royce City pocket maybe was similar. Just because we've seen a couple of these pockets get way up there with these intense winds. So we have 80 mile per hour winds confirmed from Caddo Mills with that little pocket we saw there of very intense winds. And just notice just how wild that velocity, just all the little areas of spin in with that. And some of those actually might actually, I'll take that back. The more I'm looking at this looks like this may have been several microbursts. Because unlike some of these little areas that we typically see these significant winds, some of these might have been some longer lived microbursts. Because they were fairly isolated in nature, but typically when you get a microburst, it may look like rotation. Or what we call single cell microburst. Yeah, looking at some of those might have been some microbursts, especially with how isolated they were. All right, let's go up to the north, and geez, these northern storms are just not giving up. One near Leo has some stronger rotation with it. That would eventually move near Slidell, and then we have just numerous more storms firing up behind that. There's even one near Duncan, Oklahoma, and that might eventually make its way to some of our northern counties. So this has been a very, this has been a very long evening. We have been on for almost 3 hours. This one has been on for an hour and 30 minutes. We did a brief break in between, but we had storms earlier that we covered, took a quick break, and then came back to. So we're not quite over yet, folks. Sorry to say that, but we still got storms that we got to get through. Feel free to leave any comments or questions in the chat if you're just now tuning in. We noticed that there's a small spike in viewership just a second ago. If you're just now tuning in, leave your comments or questions in the chat. We will be sure to take a look at those, either on YouTube. If you're watching on Amazon Fire TV, you're probably not going to be able to comment there. But if you're on the YouTube and the Facebook, we'll take a look at that. Let's look here. It's kind of interesting that this warning is still just sitting there. That storm really isn't in there yet. Someone asked, how is McKinney looking? The worst of this initial round has moved outside of McKinney. But we are watching these to the northwest very carefully. I can tell you the speed. These are moving. That doesn't look like. The warning says these are moving north-northeast. Specifically for that one to the south. That does not look like north-northeast to me. So these are moving southeast. I would say we would have to watch these eventually if they hold together and make their way into that area. So right now McKinney is about to be done with that first wave. Eventually, within the next hour to hour and a half, if these maintain strength and stay severe, they would be close to the McKinney area potentially. So just keep an eye on the radar. We of course are watching it here, but there could be some more storms down the line if they stay severe. So that's what we've got going on here. I'm very confused now that I'm looking at that warning text that said southeast. This storm did split. The split moved to the northeast, but the actual storm itself is moving east-southeast, if anything. So that's just odd to me. Let's see. A new update. New severe thunderstorm warning. Ping pong ball sized hail, 70-mile-per-hour winds. That's, of course, for let me go back. That's this one. I'm not even going to say for which counties because there's about 10 or 11 counties included in this warning. I won't be able to mention off the top of my head. They did trim it down to 9 counties, I think. It still remains in effect. Rockwall, Hunt, Kaufman, Van Zant, Hopkins, Rains, Delta, Lamar, Collin, and Dallas County. Here's another weird thing for me. They literally just left a sliver of probably a mile radius for Dallas County. That's interesting there. They just left a little sliver of Dallas County in there. So if you happen to live within a mile radius of the far extreme northeastern sides of Dallas County, you're still in that warning. But for Dallas County, it really does not include a lot of Dallas County. Let's see here. I'm going to go back to this other radar source. It's not displayed. We're going to put one window in just because right now, not really any of those significant pockets of wind like what we saw earlier. Except for that one near Emory. That one could be 70-mile-per-hour winds. Oh, that's new. Severe thunderstorm threat continues over the next few hours. For severe thunderstorm, especially for the southeastern portion of the watch, severe wind will be the primary threat, though isolated severe hail will be possible with discrete. Thunderstorms continue to move eastward across Oklahoma this evening. Overall, the northern part of the convection lines continue to weaken. Okay, so that's what we've got with that. New mesoscale discussion from the Storm Prediction Center. For those who don't know, the Storm Prediction Center Storm Prediction Center issues the severe weather outlooks that we get for each day, but also they do these little things that we call mesoscale discussions. And what a mesoscale discussion is when the Storm Prediction Center highlights an area that they think is of concern for severe storm development due to conditions, boundary positions, surface observations, high resolution model output. They develop an area that they think severe weather could develop in, and then they get in contact with a phone call. They'll do like a kind of a business call, if you will, where they will discuss with that weather service office who and who won't, who or who shouldn't be in severe watch of any kind. And when they do this, sometimes when there's already watches developed, they will kind of do an update regarding the watch and why, or kind of what's happening and what they anticipate to happen over the next couple of hours. So that was one of those updates that they're watching, this complex of storms, and that was the latest thinking that they had on that. Still a strong storm near Leo. Might be capable of some rotation with it. Still watching that one very carefully. This one's been looking pretty mean. It has a hook feature to it. It hasn't been the most impressive storm that we've seen so far tonight, but it is something we need to watch. I want to actually take a look here with our 3D scanner. This is one of the coolest tools that we have here with Weather 225, and you won't see this anywhere else. I'm going to actually move over to a different radar. Nope, that was the same window. Okay, so here's the exclusive tool you will only see here with us. No other stations do this. I'm sure many are capable of using this technology, but for some reason, many don't show it. But here's a look at inside of the storm. This will show you the structure of the storm from the outside all the way to what's happening inside. Call it a storm X-ray. What I want to look at is, I want to look at this. I want to look at this mesocyclone here. We'll look at a couple of tools here. I want to look at that rotation and see. It's kind of what we're looking at here. We'll look at velocity. There's that area spin right in there. It's at the lower level, right at around 10,000 feet. So that one we'll have to be watching here carefully. It's got some lower level rotation to it. Then that is still a impressive mesocyclone there that we will need to be watching. You can definitely see the updraft keeping the potential for strong to severe hail just about at 50,000 feet. Once we start hitting that threshold above 45,000, that's when you start to get the threshold for that large damaging hail potential, because the updrafts are supportive for that large damaging hail. So that's just a cool tool that we like to use here at Weather 225. We usually nerd out when we get to use it. Glad we get to use it. It's very cool. It can show us the structure of a storm and kind of what's going on within it. Also, this one's developing an outflow boundary, so we will have to watch that outflow boundary. That might help weaken this storm. If this storm gusts out, that would be a good thing. Outflow boundary slowly moving through Dallas. Maybe some gusty 45 to 50 mile per hour winds. Does not look as concerning as it did when it was back in Denton County. It moved through here. It definitely didn't look like it was quite 60, so it weakened some enough where it was still noticeably windy, but it wasn't catastrophic, gusty, severe wind or anything like that. Kind of funny to me that one warning still includes McKinney. Very weak storm south of Bonham. That should be allowed to expire here shortly, because there's really no storm in northeastern Collin County. Big complex of intense storms is moving through Kaufman County into Van Zant County, over Rains County. If you're in this area I'm about to highlight, if you are in this area where this little box is locating, since I don't have a draw tool on this. If you're within this little box, definitely did not mean to zoom in that tight. If you're in that area, definitely be on the lookout for 65, maybe 70 mile per hour winds, and maybe some pockets of isolated hail. Oh, hi, buddy. Chase, our dog, who is also our mascot, Chase the weather dog, just walked over. He's checking out to see what the radar's doing. He also says hi. Let's see. I can actually answer the, what is it? Someone asked, Lake Tawakoni area, baseball size hail, reading on radar scope. We can check that out. There is a radar program that we have that has a little bit different radar estimation tools as this one. This one we can show you with that. I'm also going to sample the other one, and that might not be too off. I would think if it's translating to the surface, that might be tennis ball sized hail. Weather Service saying ping pong, but that was probably before this. No, I guess it wasn't. Back here when it was in Quinlan, radar showed almost baseball. Keep in mind there might be a slight melting factor, so it may not be that big, but yeah, over McCoy that might easily be baseball, that latest scan. And this kind of reminds me of what we saw the other day, so that might easily, that makes sense. If you're in McCoy, you might be getting easily tennis ball, maybe even slightly larger hail. That is concerning. That is a very sharp uptick in that hail core with that. Let's see how tall. Yeah, and this storm is 62 to 65,000 feet tall. So that would not surprise me. That updraft is more than supportive for very large hail. Let's actually take a look at the 3D scanner here. And we'll go to this. Nope, that was the same window. There we go. Here's our 3D scanner. We'll show you that hail core with this. The height of the storm, where the hail core is going to be sitting, is exceeding now 50,000 feet. I want to go to the isosurface. And you can see this is where the hail is being suspended within the thunderstorm. That's exceeding about 45,000 feet. So this updraft is very supportive for the potential for that large damaging hail that you were talking about just a second ago. So if you're in McCoy, that would not surprise me if that is that would not surprise me if that could be exceeding tennis ball sized. Wills Point and Elmo, get ready for that. And let's see, is it still? No. Let's do this. That looks to be the most concerning hail core storm-wise right now. New severe thunderstorm warning, and if Trista is still watching, who asked about McKinney earlier, this is an update that you will be interested in. New severe thunderstorm warning enters Collin County. It is just to the west of McKinney, so it's getting a little bit closer. 60-mile-per-hour winds and half dollar-sized hail. Not as significant as some of the storms we saw earlier, but just a heads up, if this continues to maintain strength, it might be in that McKinney area here over the next, let's see, that's until 12:30, within the next hour or so. And then up near Bonita, this storm has been sitting over that same area for quite a bit of time. That might be producing golf ball sized hail for a fairly long period of time over the same location. So that's some unfortunate news up there. Still a little hooked to this one, but nothing significant. Any new reports coming in from the wire? Doesn't look like there's any sort of new reports coming in. That one storm near McCoy, that looks to be the biggest headliner right now for whatever is happening. And this one looks like a very intense hail core that's shaping place here. So if you live in McCoy, if you live near Wills Point, this area looks pretty concerning for the potential for maybe giant hail now. And this one, radar is now estimating 4-inch hail. That is significant. If that verifies on the ground, that could be very significant. Let's see what the Weather Service says with this. Weather Service says 2-inch hail and 70. It would not surprise me if they issue a new update here momentarily, I would think, if this continues to intensify into the same levels. Yeah, and very, very, very small area. Weather Service now saying it's almost hard to tell because we're looking so far away from the radar, but these bright colors, the Weather Service is saying that the Como and the Picton area could be experiencing up to 80-mile-per-hour winds right now. So if you're in these two areas, definitely be in shelter as if it was a tornado. 80-mile-per-hour winds can cause extensive damage and even power outages because of the damage, and that's no fun. Make sure that you are definitely in a sturdy structure in the centermost room, almost like if it was a tornado. Just because 80-mile-per-hour winds can cause just about the same damage. I'm looking to see if there's any reports coming out of either location for this large hail or even this wind activity. All right, so we have a couple of storms going on right now. 80-mile-per-hour winds near Picton. Potential baseball-sized hail near McCoy. And then the radar up to the north for the Monte County storm. The Weather Service just upgraded that to baseballs. Bonita and St. Joe, baseballs are apparently the main risk right now. I was looking to see if it was warned, but right now, no confirmation for tennis balls. But definitely, I could see Bonita. Let's actually check on the echo tops. This is showing us how tall the storm is. These are exceeding 55,000 feet. It would not surprise me if tennis balls are falling in this area. Let's go back to that one to the north. moving towards, let's see, moving towards Sanger. Radar's estimating about 1 inch hail. Maybe some stronger winds developing near Sanger. 60 mile per hour wouldn't surprise me. With this one, let's zoom back out. Let's go to the southeast. Tennis ball size hail possible still, based off radar. And that's going to be moving towards the West Tawakoni area, Tawakoni, East Tawakoni Flats, potentially Point. That's what we're doing. That's what we're dealing with right there. The Picton area, big ball of wind. Now that we have that purple radar clutter kind of out of the way, big ball of wind moving into Winnsboro. This is moving outside of our coverage area here. But honestly, it would not surprise me, given this signature, if that one up to the north near Mount Vernon and Sulphur Bluff was also a ball of 80 mile per hour winds. So that would not surprise me if that was the case for that one. Notice near Emory, maybe some strong winds developing there. That would be moving outside of our coverage area here shortly too, if that decides to pick up in intensity. Let's see, do we have any sort of reports from this? Considerable damage threat now for Cook and Montague County on the northern sides from a supercell that is developed up there. That is exactly the same storm that was over Bonita and St. Joe. Gainesville, we know we have said, we've said your city 150 times probably tonight. Fortunately, it's not over yet. We wish it was for y'all. We know that y'all have gotten hit by a couple rounds of these storms so far tonight, but this one in St. Joe might be producing tennis balls, and it might be moving closer to your location. So that is something of concern. So again, Lindsay, Munster, Marysville, could see because that warning box is in the way. Gainesville, Oak Ridge, and Woodbine. Be ready. Potential is there for a storm capable of producing up to tennis ball sized hail, and unfortunately, it is moving again towards the Gainesville area. That area has just had a very rough night tonight. Hopefully that weekends before it makes its way back into Gainesville. Several storms have made their way through there. We had a couple of pockets of isolated damage from potentially a spin up there earlier. It was trees and power lines down in a couple spots. Going back to the radar, West Tawakoni, that hill core has dramatically weakened. It would not surprise me if closer to McCoy, if we had a instance of stones up to maybe baseball sized. No reports in yet, but the other thing to consider is when a storm is this dangerous, no one's outside in this, or at least I would hope no one's outside in it, because that could be dangerous. But a lot of the times, once the storm moves out, people start to emerge, and then they start to take pictures of these storms. If you're going to go take a picture of something, make sure it's absolutely safe to do so, because obviously don't want anyone to get hurt. You matter more than a photo of something online, so make sure that you put your safety first if you're going to take a photo of anything. So don't go out in the middle of a hailstorm to get a photo of the hail. Wait until the storm has completely passed. Okay, so the Weather Service. So this does not include our coverage area, but Shreveport, outside of our county coverage area, issued an 80 mile per hour wind threat with all of these storms as they move into the county coverage area. So that's interesting. Yeah, that would make sense. And this was that pocket I said leaving our county coverage area to the north. That also looks like it's starting to exceed 70 easily. Let's see. Still monitoring that one near Sanger. Still a hook feature to it, but it doesn't look like an immediate tornado threat by any means, which is good news. To me, what this one's indicating is this one might still have a fairly strong updraft, maybe capable of quarter to half dollar sized hail. And the Weather Service just updated the warning, but there's no considerable damage just because you don't see the thicker black lines on either side of the yellow box here, like the one to the north that you see. So this one is still going to be warned for quarter-sized hail, probably in 60-mile-per-hour winds. This is just your basic entry-level severe weather risk at this point. To the north, though, that one near St. Joe and Munster, that one still looks like a very damaging storm on the side of hail. So heads up to Gainesville, Lindsay, Myra, and Munster, even up to southern portions, or even potentially downtown Marysville, where that hail core is going to be moving through. Another hail core which looks relatively strong is over Whitesboro. That is going to be moving in soon into portions of Sadler and Southmaid. Watching those closely. But really right now it looks like stuff's starting to fortunately wind down. Now we are going to be watching these storms up near Ardmore. Notice how these are diving towards the Red River. And these are capable of producing strong winds and hail. Oh, hi, buddy. Hi, buddy. Did you kick my chair? That is Chase the Weather Dog here. He's trying to climb up in the chair. He is our Weather 225 mascot. And my pet. He also wants to see what's happening with the weather. Come on, bud. Come here. So yeah, St. Joe looks to be the most concerning hailstorm. Oh, come here. If I had a camera, I'd let him say hi, but we do not have a camera on right now. New severe thunderstorm warning. And that is for far northern counties. So right now it looks like the worst of it is over for that significant wind threat with that just absolute monster of a storm that moved through earlier. Just to show you how long this one survived. And this is a cool thing about weather that people don't usually think about. Storms are living, breathing things, and it's weird to say, but storms are birthed when you have atmosphere conditions that are favorable for it. They go through maturing cycles, they go through complete life cycles, and then they die. This storm originated from Lawton, Oklahoma. This one went on to produce weak tornadoes in Lawton. It went on to produce a multi-vortex tornado in southern Oklahoma at one point in time. It went on to produce a tornado just before it crossed into the Texas side of the Red River. And then it went on to produce large hail, intense wind in several spots. But this one has tracked, and we'll show you. If you're not sure where Lawton, Oklahoma is, here's where Lawton, Oklahoma is. It is just north of Wichita Falls. So this storm has been around all the way up since Lawton. It's been on going for several hours now. This one is a monster storm that continues to chug along to the southeast with intense winds. It will probably hold itself together into portions of eastern Texas and into portions of Louisiana too. So this is a very long-lived storm. Thankfully, didn't see any sort of larger tornadoes with this. Would not surprise me if in the next couple of days we get, or by tomorrow we get some updates that there was probably some spin-up tornadoes with it. Definitely saw some pockets of damaging straight-line winds with it. Very impressive storm. So that's just a quick backstory to this long-lived storm that is now moving outside of our coverage area here soon. Into Sanger, still watching that storm. It is not looking as intense as it was. Maybe some half-dollar size hail with it. but it is not the overall super intense severe storm like the ones that we're seeing to the south and east that are still ongoing there as well. We've been on for a couple of hours. To thank everyone for tuning in. We're going to do a minute of looking at questions and asking, or those who are asking questions, and just make sure that we're not going to miss anything, and then we'll probably wrap this up. We will definitely come back into coverage if storms do continue to intensify, but we're noticing kind of a more stable trend with these, and less of those widespread multi significant wind and maybe isolated tornado threats that were coming together with some of the other ones. So we'll take a minute to look and see if there's any sort of questions or comments here before we go ahead and end this. So feel free to leave that YouTube or Facebook. And while I wait, I'm going to check and see if there's any updates here. Don't lick the chair. Don't lick the chair. Let's see. Really no updates here, so that's some good news there. Anything on YouTube? All right, so that probably wraps it up here. I'll wait another second just to see. Usually some of these are delayed. Looks like some outflow ahead of this one. This one might be weakening. Yeah, outflow might be assisting in the weakening trend with this one. Definitely over the next little bit, if you are in Gainesville, Munster, Myra, Lindsay, make sure that you are aware of that hail risk. Whitesboro, Sadler, that might also be $half sized hail. But really, right now, we're not seeing those intense pockets of wind like what we were seeing earlier, or storms with multiple areas of rotation to be monitored. So we're going to go ahead and just end this because things are looking a little bit less significant as they were earlier. Keep in mind, make sure you have multiple ways to receive warnings before you leave this broadcast tonight, just because A, we will be back into coverage if needed, but B, we're still watching more storms to the north of us, and if those backbuild and move into the area later, overnight tonight, those could pose a severe threat. So you will definitely want a way to receive alerts later tonight if these make their way into the area. Stay tuned. Make sure you follow this page if you're new to it so that you can be notified when we go live next, because, like I said, if storms move into the area, we will definitely be live covering from the Weather 225 Storm Studios. So we're going to go ahead and end this. Me and Chase say have a good night. Stay tuned to the weather. Have multiple ways to receive alerts. And thank you guys for watching. Thank you for watching Weather 225 DFW's live weather channel. Stay tuned for more weather after this break.
Sun, rain, blistering heat, freezing cold, and Texas storms can damage the roof on your home or commercial building. For a free inspection, call the experts at My Pro Construction and Roofing. They're a DFW-based Platinum preferred roofing contractor with Owens Corning and Tilcor stone-coated steel. Fully insured. Ask about the My Pro difference.
Due to recent storms, My Pro has boots on the ground ready to help you.
For a free roof inspection, go to myproconstruction.com.
For my home, it's My Pro.
Whether it's sunny, stormy, or snowy in North Texas, be sure to download our free Weather 225 mobile app. Like our video and our live stream? Find us today on Amazon Fire TV.